In the corner of the alien lab, under cold blue lights, there stood a large glass cage. It was tall and clean, but inside it felt like death. Behind the clear wall sat a silent alien woman, her skin pale blue, glowing faintly like moonlight. Her eyes never moved. Her body never shifted. She sat there day and night without a sound. The workers called her the Cursed One, and they laughed when they passed her. "She's barren," they whispered. "She cannot bear life, so we locked her like glass." For many years, she was only a statue to them, not dangerous, not useful, just there. Some aliens even brought visitors to see her, like an exhibit in a shameful museum. She was once a beauty, they'd say, but no male wanted her once they knew. She cannot give birth, they'd explain, so she was placed here to remind others of failure. No one cared what she thought. No one asked how she felt. She was not a person anymore, only a reminder. But one day, a new worker arrived. He was not from her world, not even from her system. He was human. His name was Callan, and he had been hired to repair broken tech across the lab. He was tall, kind-eyed, with calloused hands and a curious mind. He liked fixing things, machines, wires, engines. But he also looked at people. He saw things others ignored, and the moment he passed by the glass cage, he stopped. The alien guards scoffed. "Keep moving, human. She doesn't talk. She doesn't move." But Callan didn't listen. He stood in front of the glass and looked inside. He didn't see a monster or a curse. He saw a woman sitting very still, eyes wide open but deeply sad. He placed his hand softly on the glass and whispered, "Can you hear me?" There was no reply. The woman didn't blink, didn't shift, but Callan smiled. "That's okay. I'll come back." And he did. Every day, during lunch break, he came to her glass cage. He talked to her, told her stories about Earth, about music and sunlight. He brought small things, drawings, old books, tiny trinkets, and left them outside her glass. He laughed alone, made jokes, shared memories, and still, she didn't move, not once, not even a blink. Other workers laughed at him. "Still talking to the ghost human?" But he shrugged. "Better company than most of you." They called her Barren, but Callan called her Starbright. He said her skin glowed like a night sky, and he hoped she'd one day shine again. Then, on the 7th day, something happened. Callan sat down near the glass, tired, holding a small music box. He wound it up, and a soft melody played, a lullaby from Earth, a song his mother once sang to him. He whispered, "This song kept me warm when I was cold and alone." He looked up, and his breath stopped. Inside the cage, the woman had moved her eyes just slightly, just enough to meet his gaze. Callan froze, not wanting to scare her. She slowly lifted one hand and placed it on the inside of the glass, fingers weak, trembling, but alive. Callan smiled, tears filling his eyes. He lifted his hand and pressed it against the glass, palm to palm, separated by a wall, but somehow, closer than ever, a quiet spark lit in her eyes, not bright, not loud, but real. For the first time in years, someone had spoken to her, not as a curse, but as a person, and she had answered, not with words, but with hope. Callan whispered, "You're not empty, you're just waiting." And from inside, her lips parted slightly. A breath caught in her throat. She was not a ghost, not a statue, not a forgotten story. She was still here, still alive, still holding on to something. Maybe a dream she thought had died. And now, she was no longer alone, because a human saw her, and he didn't run. The next morning, Callan returned early to the facility. He didn't go to the repair bay, didn't check his tools. He walked straight to the glass cage, his heart racing. Would she be there the same way as before? Would she pretend yesterday never happened? Or did she really move her eyes? The cage looked the same, cold, clear, and silent, but something felt different. The woman inside was still in the same seated pose, hands folded neatly, yet Callan felt her watching. His eyes met hers again, and this time, he didn't imagine it. Her gaze was real, soft, unsure, like someone just waking from a long, dark dream. "Hey," he whispered, standing close to the glass. I kept thinking about you all night. He smiled gently, not wanting to frighten her. I wasn't sure if I was crazy or if you really looked at me. Her fingers twitched, just once, then still again, but Callan saw it. She wasn't just hearing him, she was listening. He took a slow breath and pulled something from his jacket. It was a tiny paper flower, folded by hand, worn but colorful. My little sister made this for me years ago, he said. She told me it was lucky. He set it gently by the base of the glass. She said, even something that doesn't grow can still be beautiful. He looked up at her. You remind me of that flower. The guards nearby rolled their eyes. She won't answer, human. She's just a cursed shell. Callan didn't reply. He turned back to the cage, ignoring the noise. You blinked yesterday, he said softly. That means something. I know it's hard, he continued. I know they treated you like trash, locked you up like a danger. But you're not dangerous, he said, voice trembling. You're precious. She tilted her head ever so slightly, a small movement, but to Callan, it was everything. His heart felt heavy and light at the same time, like he had just opened a door and found somehow. And on the other side, waiting for years, he sat cross-legged on the ground, leaning his back against the wall near the glass. I don't have anyone left, he said after a long pause. Earth's not the same anymore. There was a war, he whispered. We lost people, families. My sister, my mother, all gone. But I keep going, he looked at the floor, because maybe someone else needs me. He turned his head slightly toward the glass. Maybe you. A long silence followed, but this one didn't feel empty. It felt full, like a room waiting for a voice. Then, so slow it almost didn't register, her eyes blinked again. Once, then twice. Callan's breath caught, his lips parted in shock. She was really listening now, and maybe, trying to speak in her own way. He stood up slowly, excitement rising like a wave in his chest. I knew it, he said with a smile. You're still in there. You're not a ghost or a failure. You're someone with a voice and a story. She raised her hand again, pressing it gently against the glass. Callan mirrored it, skin to surface, warmth to cold. They didn't touch, not really, but it felt more powerful than any handshake. In that moment, words weren't needed. They had something stronger. Connection. From behind them, the guards snickered. You'll only end up broken, human. She's been silent for 10 years, one added. Don't waste your hope. But Callan didn't care. He saw something in her eyes the others missed. He saw loneliness, yes, but also something else. Longing. She wasn't empty. She was waiting. Do you want me to come back tomorrow? Callan asked quietly. Her lips trembled, but no words came. Instead, she lowered her hand and gave the softest, smallest nod. It was barely there, but Callan saw it, and that was enough. He smiled like he hadn't smiled in years. I'll be here, he promised. Every single day. As he walked away, the other workers shook their heads. But he didn't look back. He felt something stirring, not just in her, but in himself. A purpose, a bond, a beginning. And inside the cage, the alien woman slowly turned her head. For the first time in 10 years, she moved her body willingly. Her eyes stayed on the paper flower, and her fingers gently reached out to touch it. A single tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't know why she was crying, but for once, it didn't feel like sorrow. It felt like something blooming. Days passed, and Callan kept his promise. He visited her glass cage every day, no matter how tired he was, no matter how much others laughed. And every day, the silent alien woman gave a little more. She no longer sat frozen like a statue. Now, she watched him carefully, sometimes nodded, sometimes blinked. Once, she even let a soft hum escape her lips when he played earth music. It wasn't much, but it was real. It was growth, like the first green sprout rising from a dead tree. Callan had begun calling her Leora in his heart. He didn't know her real name, and she didn't offer it. But Leora meant light, and that's what she was to him, a soft glow inside the darkest place. But one day, as Callan sat near her cage, he heard a group of alien guards whispering behind him. They were drunk, careless, their voices louder than they thought. "She's still there, after all these years," one said, laughing cruelly. "She should have been melted," another scoffed, "not locked in glass like a jewel." "But the council said her beauty was rare," a third added, "too beautiful to waste, too cursed to keep." Callan stiffened, his ears sharp. He turned slowly, pretending not to listen, but his heart pounded in his chest. "Do you know why she's in there?" One of them slurred. "She's barren. Her womb brings death." "Every time she tried to carry life," the second said, "the child died inside her." "She begged for help," the third sneered, "but our healers gave up. They said it was a curse from the stars. And the council said her beauty could not be wasted, but her failure would not be forgiven. So they placed her behind glass, eternal shame, eternal silence." Callan's hands clenched into fists, his breath caught in his throat. He looked at Leora through the clear wall. She was facing him, but her eyes were far away. She had heard it all. Tears streamed down her face, silently, like a river too tired to roar. She didn't move, didn't sob, just cried. Callan stood and turned to the guards, rage burning inside him. "Shame on all of you," he growled. "You call her cursed, but you're the ones who chose cruelty over care. You call yourselves advanced," he spat, "but you cage a woman for a wound she did not choose." The guards only laughed, shrugging. "It's our way, human." "Your way is broken," Callan replied, "and I won't be part of it." He stormed off for the day, but his mind was spinning. That night, he couldn't sleep. The words repeated in his head. Womb brings death, beauty locked in glass. He thought of Earth's history, how women once were blamed for being childless, how pain was turned into shame. And now, he had seen the same thing in another world, another species, different bodies, same cruelty. The next morning, Callan returned with a new energy in his step. He walked up to the glass, set his hand gently on the surface, and said, "I heard what they said yesterday." Leora didn't move, her head low, her eyes wet. "I know your people call you cursed," he continued, "but I don't believe that." Her fingers twitched, her lips quivered. "I don't know how much pain you've been through," he said softly, "but I know what it feels like to lose. I know the pain of wanting to protect someone, and failing." He took a breath, then whispered, "But listen to me, Leora. Being a mother doesn't mean carrying a child. It means love. It means warmth. It means giving yourself to someone who needs you." He leaned closer to the glass. "And if you still want that, I know someone who needs a mother." Leora slowly lifted her head. Her eyes met his, filled with confusion and a flicker of something else. "Hope. I have a little girl," Callan said. Quietly, "Not mine by blood. She was abandoned after a border skirmish. She doesn't talk much," he added, "but she holds my hand tightly when she's scared. I think she would like you." Leora's lips trembled, and for the first time, she opened her mouth. Her voice came out rough, unused, but soft like a breeze. I will only bring pain," she whispered. Callan smiled gently, tears in his own eyes. "No," he said, "you will bring healing. Not just to her, but to yourself." There was a long pause. Leora looked down at her own hands, small, delicate, shaking. Then she looked at him again, and something changed in her eyes. She reached up and placed her hand on the glass, slowly, firmly, and Callan knew she was ready to leave the cage. She was ready to become something more, not cursed but chosen. The sky turned gray. Thick clouds rolled in over the alien city. Lightning cracked far in the distance, and a strange hum filled the air. The workers in the facility moved quickly, muttering about the storm. "System failure risk," someone said. Keep all containments secure, another warned. But deep inside the glass hallway, Callan stood in front of the cage. His eyes met Leora's, and this time, she stood up. For the first time in 10 long years, she stood on her own feet. Her knees shook, her body trembled, but she stood, and she looked directly at him, as if something inside her had awakened. Callan placed his hand on the glass. "Leora," he said quietly, "I think this storm is our chance." She blinked slowly, her lips moving. "They won't let me go." He nodded. "I know, but I'm not asking for permission anymore." Outside, the thunder growled like an angry beast. Lights in the hallway flickered. The backup alarms began to click. Power was dropping across the grid. Callan pulled a small metal tool from his belt, a multi-signal breaker used for repairing control panels. He had modified it last night, carefully, quietly, and now he moved to the cage's side panel and opened the hatch. Wires glowed in red and blue, still active. "You shouldn't be doing this," she whispered, voice barely audible. "I have to do this," Callan replied. "You deserve more than a cage." Suddenly, a loud crash echoed from the far end of the corridor. A backup generator exploded in sparks. Screams echoed from the control room. Guards rushed around the facility in confusion. In the chaos, Callan worked fast. Sparks flew from the panel as he cut one wire, then another. The glass shimmered, pulsed with light, then flickered dark. "Glass field disabled," he muttered, stepping back. The cage door made a soft click. Leora stepped forward, unsure. She placed one hand on the door, pushed gently, and it opened. The air hit her skin for the first time in years. Cold, free, real. She gasped, then stumbled forward into Callan's arms. He caught her gently, holding her like something precious. "I've got you," he whispered. She looked up at him, eyes wide, unsure if this was a dream, but the warmth of his arms told her it was real. "Come on," he said. "We have to move fast." Together, they slipped through the back hallways of the lab. Most guards were too distracted by the storm outside. Callan knew the system layout. He'd studied it for days. He led her through broken corridors, flickering lights, and leaking pipes. The storm outside slammed against the facility dome. Rain pounded like fists. Wind howled like ghosts. "Where are we going?" she asked, breathless. "There's a supply tunnel that leads to the surface," he said. "It's rarely used." They reached a service gate, locked tight with a rusted keypad. Callan entered a code. Wrong. He tried again. Wrong. Third time. Click. The door creaked open, cold air rushing through. Outside, the storm was fierce. The world was Soa, Ked in shadow and rain. But Leora looked at the open space with wonder. She hadn't seen the sky in so long. Even if it was dark, even if it was violent, it was freedom. "Stay close to me," Callan said, taking her hand. They ran, slipping down the muddy hill behind the facility. Sirens began to scream behind them. The guards had noticed her missing. "Unauthorized containment breach," a voice boomed. "Subject 113 has escaped." "They're coming," she whispered, fear returning to her voice. "We'll make it," Callan said firmly. Through twisted roots and pouring rain, they ran. Lightning flashed. Then something roared above. A small patrol ship hovered over the trees, lights searching. "We need cover," Callan shouted, pulling her toward a broken tree trunk. They crouched inside, soaked and shivering. She looked at him with panic. "Why did you do this?" "Because," he whispered, catching his breath, "you didn't deserve that prison." "Because you still have a heart," he added, "and someone out there needs it." She stared at him, confused. "But I can't give life." Callan shook his head. "You can give love." She closed her eyes, feeling the cold rain on her skin. It hurt, but it was real, and so was he. The patrol ship passed by, missing them. They waited a few moments, then ran again. At last, they reached a small opening in the rocks, a tunnel that led deep underground, hidden by vines. "This leads to the outer ridge," Callan said, guiding her inside. "There's a cabin there, a safe place." She followed him, no longer dragging her feet. For the first time in years, she was not waiting behind glass. She was walking, running, breathing. living, and though the storm roared above them, her heart beat with something brighter than fear, hope. The tunnel was cold and narrow, but to Liora, it felt like a passage to a new world. Her feet were tired, her breathing shaky, but she kept moving. Behind her, the noise of the storm faded, and ahead, a soft orange light flickered. They had reached the end. Callan helped her out of the tunnel and into a clearing. There, hidden among tall trees and moss-covered rocks, stood a small wooden cabin. Its windows glowed warmly in the night. Smoke rose gently from a crooked chimney. Liora blinked in surprise. "It's peaceful," she whispered. Callan smiled. "It's home." He opened the door slowly, guiding her inside. The cabin was simple but warm. Handmade shelves, worn rugs, and a tiny fire crackling in the corner. And near that fire sat a small figure, a little girl, no older than 5, curled up in a blanket, holding a stuffed alien toy. Her skin was light green, and her eyes were big and silver. She looked up when the door creaked, but didn't speak, just stared quietly. "Hey, sweetheart," Callan said gently. "I brought someone with me." The girl didn't move, but her eyes stayed fixed on Liora. Liora froze, unsure what to do. She had faced judgment from her own kind, seen cruelty from strangers, but this child's gaze felt heavier than all of it, because it was not fear, not hatred, it was curiosity. Callan knelt beside the girl. "Remember I told you about the lady behind the glass?" The girl nodded slowly. "She's not behind glass anymore," he said, smiling softly. "She's here now." The girl looked at Liora again, then patted the floor beside her. A silent invitation. Leora's hands shook as she stepped forward. She sat down carefully, leaving space, unsure if she was welcome. The girl crawled closer, blanket dragging behind her. Then, to Leora's shock, the child gently placed the stuffed toy in her lap. Liora blinked, her hands hovering over it. The toy was soft, small, patched up in many places. Why give this to me?" she asked in a whisper. The girl finally spoke, voice soft as wind. "You look lonely." Leora's throat tightened. She wasn't sure what to say. No one had spoken to her with kindness in so long. She held the toy gently, as if it were made of glass. "Thank you," she said. And for the first time, her voice did not shake. Callan watched from across the room, silent. He didn't interrupt. He knew this moment was not his. It was theirs. The girl reached out her hand, small fingers brushing Leora's. "Do you know how to braid hair?" she asked, tilting her head. Liora blinked, startled, then shook her head slowly. "No, I never learned." "That's okay," the child said, crawling into Leora's lap. "I can teach you." Liora stiffened as the girl sat against her. No one had touched her like this in years. Not with pain, not with fear, but with trust. She looked to Callan, confused, scared. I don't know what I'm doing," she whispered. Callan stepped closer, knelt beside them. "You don't need to know," he said. "Just feel." Liora looked down at the girl, who was now playing with the edge of her robe. A soft warmth began to spread in Leora's chest. It was unfamiliar, like the first rays of sunlight after endless night. She gently placed her arms around the girl, unsure, but the child leaned into her without hesitation. They sat like that for a while, silence wrapped around them like a soft blanket. The fire crackled, and outside, the storm had passed. Later, when the child had fallen asleep in her lap, Liora whispered, "She doesn't fear me. She chooses you," Callan replied, sitting beside them. "I can't give life," she said, voice trembling. "I was cursed. My body rejected every chance." Callan shook his head slowly. "You gave her peace," he said, "and that's more than some mothers ever do." Liora looked down at the child, her small breaths rising and falling, warm against Leora's arms. "I was told I would bring only sorrow." "But this doesn't feel like sorrow." Callan nodded. "That's because it isn't. It's healing." The girl stirred in her sleep, mumbled softly. "Mama," Liora gasped. Her hand froze mid-stroke through the child's soft hair. Tears filled her glowing eyes. She looked at Callan in disbelief. He only smiled, gently. She sees who you really are. And for the first time in her life, Leora believed it too. She wasn't just the woman in the glass. She wasn't just the one who couldn't bear life. She was the one who could hold it, protect it, nurture it. And in that quiet forest cabin, wrapped in warmth and trust, a cursed woman became something she thought was impossible. She became a mother. The cabin woke slowly with the morning light. Golden beams pushed through the wooden slats, lighting up the small room in warmth. Birds outside sang soft songs, and a breeze danced through the cracks. But inside the cabin, something far deeper was happening, something silent and strong, healing. Leora opened her eyes to find the child still curled against her. The small girl's head rested on her chest, fingers gripping her robe tightly. For a moment, Leora just stared at the child's peaceful face. She didn't move, didn't breathe loudly, afraid the moment would vanish like a dream. Callan entered quietly, carrying a bowl of warm broth. He smiled when he saw them. "She stayed with you all night," he whispered, setting the bowl down. "She never does that with anyone else." Leora looked at him, confused. "Why me?" Callan knelt beside them. "Because you listened without asking her to speak." Later that morning, Leora sat by the fire. The child, now wide awake, handed her a wooden brush. "Can you brush my hair?" she asked softly. Leora hesitated, her hands still clumsy with care. I don't know how," she said, ashamed. "I'll teach you," the girl replied with a giggle, climbing into her lap again. Callan watched from the kitchen corner, quietly cleaning dishes. Each movement Leora made was careful, uncertain. But with every stroke of the brush, the child smiled more, and with every smile, Leora's fear faded. By midday, the little girl asked Leora to help her with lunch. Callan guided them, showing Leora how to peel vegetables and stir soup. Leora dropped the spoon once and nearly burned the pot. She gasped, apologizing quickly, but the girl just laughed and hugged her from behind. "It's okay," she said. "You'll get better." And those words hit deeper than Leora expected. Then Leora expected, "You'll get better." No one had ever told her that. Her people only told her she was broken, that she would always be wrong. But here, in this cabin, with this child, she was allowed to try, allowed to learn, allowed to grow. That evening, they sat together on the porch, watching the trees sway in the soft wind. Leora held the child in her lap again, brushing her small braids with gentle hands. "She called me Mama yesterday," Leora whispered to Callan, who was sitting nearby. Callan nodded. "I heard." "I didn't know what to say," she admitted. "I wanted to cry." "Then cry," Callan said kindly. "Tears don't mean weakness. They mean feeling." Leora stared at the child's small fingers wrapped around hers. "I don't know how to be a mother," she whispered. Callan smiled. "No one does in the beginning." "It's not about knowing," he added. "It's about trying." That night, the child had a nightmare. She cried in her sleep, tossing and turning, mumbling words from a memory too heavy for her tiny heart. Leora woke instantly, her body reacting before her mind did. She held the child close, rocking her gently, whispering soft sounds in her native language, a lullaby she barely remembered, words that once meant nothing, now full of comfort. The child quieted, her small hand gripping Leora's shirt. Callan stood in the doorway and watched. Leora looked up at him, unsure. "Did I do it right?" Callan's eyes glistened. "You did it perfectly," he said. In the following days, the bond between Leora and the child grew stronger. They laughed together, planted small seeds in the back garden. The child drew pictures, stick figures with glowing blue skin and long arms holding hands. She told Leora stories, asked endless questions, and gave her silly nicknames. And Leora answered everyone, not always correctly, not always smoothly, but always with love. One afternoon, while braiding the child's hair, Leora paused. "Why me?" she asked quietly. "Why did you choose me when you had him?" The child giggled. "Because he's my papa." "And you feel like warmth." "You smell like stars," she added. "And your arms make the nightmares go away." Leora's lips trembled. For so long, she had believed her touch was poison, that her body brought only sadness. But here was a child telling her she was comfort, safety, love. That night, while washing the dishes, Leora turned to Callan. "She's changing me," she said softly. Callan dried a plate and nodded. "And you're changing her." "I thought I was empty," she confessed. "But now, I feel full." Callan looked into her eyes. "You were never empty, Leora," he said. "You were waiting for someone to see you." And as the fire crackled behind them and the child slept peacefully in the next room, Leora smiled for the first time in a way that came from deep within, not forced, not polite, just real. She was no longer a prisoner of glass, no longer cursed or forgotten. She was something far greater. She was becoming a mother. The morning was calm. Sunlight filtered through the tall trees, casting golden shadows across the clearing. Inside the cabin, the child giggled as Leora chased her gently around the table. Leora's face was glowing, not just her skin, but her smile. Her laugh was soft, a sound once forgotten, now blooming again. Callan watched them from the porch, his heart full. Every day, Leora grew stronger. Her movements were freer. Her voice was brighter. She no longer looked like the woman from the glass cage. She looked like a mother, but peace doesn't last forever. That afternoon, the sound of engines echoed above the trees. Shadows stretched across the grass as a sleek alien vessel descended. The child froze, her toy falling from her hands. Callan's expression changed instantly. Serious. Protect. Leora stepped toward the door, heart pounding. "They found me," she whispered. The ship landed silently in the field just beyond the cabin. From it stepped 3 tall alien figures, dressed in dark robes. Symbols on their chests glowed. The Council. They carried no weapons, but their presence was sharp like a blade. Leora stepped outside, Callan at her side. The child clung to Leora's robe, eyes wide. The lead counselor, a silver-skinned male with sharp eyes, spoke first. "Subject 113, he said coldly. "You have broken the boundaries of your confinement. You were deemed unfit for society and marked with the curse of barrenness. You must return." Leora stood still. She no longer trembled, no longer lowered her head. She looked them in the eye, her voice steady. "You buried me behind glass," she said. "You called me empty, a shame. You never once asked what I felt." The second counselor stepped forward. "It was for the good of our people," he said. "You were dangerous. You carried death." Leora's eyes narrowed. "No," she said sharply. "I carried hope no one understood. You feared what didn't fit your idea of perfection. You feared me because I failed your test of womanhood." The first counselor raised his hand. "We do not debate with exiles. You are required to return at once." Before Leora could speak, a small voice rose behind her. "No!" The child stepped forward, standing between Leora and the council. "She's my mama," the girl said loudly. "You don't get to take her." The counselors looked down at the child, clearly confused. Callan stepped beside them, arms crossed. "She has a child now," he said. "She has a family. And we choose her." The third counselor, a woman with hard eyes, sneered. "A mother who bears no child by blood is a false mother. She's not worthy." Leora stepped forward, her voice strong now. "I did not bear her," she said, "but I hold her when she's afraid. I feed her when she's hungry. I sing to her, listen to her, love her. She calls me Mama because she feels safe in my arms." She looked the counselor directly in the eyes. "Is that not what a mother is?" Silence hung in the air. The wind moved through the trees, as if even nature paused to listen. The child reached up and took Leora's hand. Callan placed his hand on her shoulder, and in that moment, she stood tall, not alone, but surrounded by family. The counselors looked at each other, unsure. This was not the woman they had locked in glass. This was not the cursed one. This was someone new, someone whole. The lead counselor turned slowly. "You've made your choice," he said, "then live with it outside our world. You are no longer welcome in the cities of our kind." Leora raised her chin, her voice calm. I was never welcome there to begin with. Without another word, the council returned to their ship. It lifted silently and disappeared into the sky, and when it was gone, the wind carried something else. Freedom. Leora let out a long breath, not from fear, but from release. She turned to Callan and the child, both still standing with her. She knelt, hugging the girl tightly. I will never let them take you, she whispered, and I will never again let anyone put me back in a cage. Callan smiled. You never belonged in one. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the forest, Leora sat by the fire, the child sleeping peacefully beside her. She held the small hands in hers, watching the glow of the flames. Callan sat nearby, a quiet comfort. I thought I needed to bear life to be whole, she whispered. But now I see. Love makes us whole. Callan nodded. You weren't cursed, Leora. You were waiting to be seen. And she was, seen, loved, chosen. Not by her blood, but by her heart. She had become what her people said she never could, not because of science or rules, but because one human gave her the space to heal, and one child gave her a name she never thought she would earn, Mother.